So my man, and he's still my guy. He might be listening right now, but Damon Webb Sr., he said, Seb, could you please tell the Michigan people that song is not just Dennis Northfleet song. He said, that's a cute thing. This is our anthem. So he said, can you please, as enlightened and as much as we love what Fleet is doing out there, that's a cute thing.
Hey, Sam, man, that's exactly right. That's an Omega Sci-Fi classic song. And it's funny because when I played at Michigan, we shunned fraternities. I mean, if you were in a fraternity, we was going to whoop you.
Y'all didn't just shun fraternity. Y'all did more than shun
Yeah,
fraternity.
we used to fight them. Yeah, I mean, we used to knock out the frat boys. But we looked at it as if your football team, your teammates was your fraternity. So now we didn't went from that to my man Northfleet doing the dog, essentially in the big house. Boy, we've come a long way.
Marcus is like, oh my God, the world is.
We would have snatched him off the field. We'd have said, hey man, until you take one back, you don't do the dog out there. As a matter of fact, don't y'all play the dog to get this man started.
But you're predisposed to not liking frat guys. So,
yeah, I don't like frat guys.
So it's a little something extra there.
I'm cool with them now, but we was in school. Hey, we'll be at a party. They get to stepping around. We close that circle. Like, man, if he bumped me one more time, I'm telling you.
I remember icebreaker freshman year. Seeing it, and they would ring the track and field building. Going through the whole thing. Boy, I tell you, it was pretty exciting to watch those brothers dance, but we didn't like them. So I can't say I like Northfleet's dance. And when I see Northfleet today, I'm gonna tell him, you stop doing the dog in that stadium until you take one back. All right. So Marcus, I want to give you the opportunity to speak on some things before we get to X's and O's. Speak on some topics that we talked about this morning. First being you being a guy who you were raised under Mike Gittleson, and you have worked recently under Mike Barwis. It's my contention that, man, strength and conditioning these days, that there isn't this huge gap from program to program. You got guys that can do that job. And that's not diminishing the attributes, the skill set, the acumen of the guys that are in these places. It's just saying that pretty much everybody's good these days, or at least most big-time programs have good strength and conditioning.
Yeah, Sam, I would agree wholeheartedly that I don't think there's a drop-off between even schools in the Mid-American Conference to the top level in the FCS. You know, Mike Gittleson was the very first strength and conditioning coach way back in the 70s. I mean, that was a created position because of his presence in the Michigan program and how Bo Schembechler met Mike and hired him. And Mike Gittleson developed a lot of pros. But in today's world, the way people train is a lot different. And I think there's more innovative strategies and things that you can do. So what Mike Gittleson did was good at the time for 30 years. And then as the game started to change, then you started to train the athlete a little bit differently. So enter a Mike Barwiz, who I think is probably at the top of the tops in not only just collegiate strength and conditioning, but also he trains professional athletes. Mm-hmm. Mike Barwiz essentially gave Larry Foote, along with James Henry down the street, another 5 to 6 years added to his career because of the way he trained physically.
And what did he do with Coach Henry?
He works with his speed and agility with Coach Henry.
And Coach Henry has done that for years.
He's always helped out Michigan football players. I mean, I would right now encourage any Michigan football player to utilize Coach Henry's stretching services and some of his track services right now because it's free. Now, he's going to charge you once you graduate. I
remember one year I saw Dre Bly down there working out.
Yeah. I mean, Coach Henry knows what he's doing. He actually helped Ty Law. He helped Bianca Batuka, Tyrone Wheatley. I mean, we all used to go to James Henry for stretching and learning how to run a 40. But, you know, Gittleson didn't like that. But we got the best of both worlds. Mm-hmm. But
had to do what you had to do.
Yeah, you know, it was time to get that money. But I think that from what Gittleson has done to watching Mike Barwiz and the guys that he's trained, I think Barwiz got you more NFL combine ready, and I think Gittleson got you more ready to play football. And if I don't think you were going to necessarily leave faster than what you came, and in either instances, I mean, but Barwiz had more of an emphasis on speed, times and diet and all of that stuff. But I think Aaron Wellman's doing the same thing. I mean, some of those kids over there have drastically changed physically. So to say that Michigan is not being successful, as they compare to other programs, I think it's ludicrous.
All right. So let's talk about another piece that we seized upon based on this story by Alan True that kind of it shows the difference in star rating. So there's a reflection here on the ability to identify talent or the ability to identify talent that fits what you do, and then there's and cultivate that talent, and then there's the experience factor where you look at it and Michigan State is a much more experienced team. So in one instance, particularly on offense, there's a huge difference between the offenses as far as star rating, but there's a huge difference between the offenses as far as experience as well. Well,
first of all, Sam, I'm a little disappointed that Michigan has to compare themselves to the guys down the street.
But it is what it is now.
Talent and experience.
I hear you.
But here's the thing. Mark D'Antonio has been there for, 8 seasons now? Mm-hmm. 8 seasons straight. He's kept his staff intact for the most part. And when you give a coach 8 years, then now you can bring in the type of guys that fit your system. He recruits personalities. And he doesn't, what I'll say is recruiting, to me, the difference between now and the way it used to be, the evaluation process isn't as thorough. I think people look at highlight tapes now as movie trailers. Oh, I'm going to go see that movie. This is great. You go spend your money. Then by the time you get halfway through the movie, you say, man, I probably could have, stayed at home, or that wasn't a good movie. And I think that's what's happening in recruiting, whereas there were less recruiting services, there was less ranking services and all these publications. I'm sure it's making people a lot of money, but it's not helping anybody. True. It's not helping anybody truly identify talent, because now I don't think coaches really go the extra mile when it comes to going to games, watching 2 and 3 full complete game tapes.
So I think there's a danger in going too far in one direction. I think it's a danger in looking at recruiting rankings and saying, man, that's it. That's all you need. And then I think there's a danger in totally disregarding them, because you look at the top teams in recruiting every year, and most of those teams wind up being the top teams in the country. Your Alabamas, your Florida States, you look at those teams, they're up there. Lately, it's been Ole Miss. Ole Miss has been recruiting like a beast, and then all of a sudden you look up now, and sure, they have great coaching, but man, you see a lot of big time players that are part of that ascent. So I think there's a balance. I think there's a balance to it, that if you look at a recruiting service and you say every 5-star guy that's a big time guy, you're going to be disappointed. But I think you can look at it and say, man, Alabama's getting 4 or 5 stars every year. I see why they're so they could get good coaching, no doubt. They get great players too.
See, I think that Alabama's getting the real top tier 4 or 5-star players. See, there's a difference between a guy who is ranked a 4 or 5-star and a guy who is a 4 or 5-star.
I got you.
Big difference there. Now, first of all, let me just go back through just the history with a couple of guys. Marcus Ray, I was maybe a 2-star coming out of Ohio, and I would like to think I'm probably, if not the best, one of the best safeties to ever play here. I'm going to say the best, just in my personal opinion.
Who ranked you a 2-star? Tom Lemmy?
I don't know, because it was like there was only 2 or 3 recruiting services coming out. But when Greg Madison came to recruit me and he watched the tape, and Joe Paterno saw the same tape with 25 tackles, they said this kid is a must-have. All right. So when you look at Braylon Edwards, who was a 2-star until Michigan State offered him, which made him a 3-star, he became arguably one of the best receivers, if not the best, to go along with Anthony Carter. It's a different era. But
they recruited him out of camp.
You see what I'm saying? So look at James Hall. James Hall was the sleeper of the 95 class and played 11 years in the National Football League. Very underrated player. Now my professional career didn't really work out just because I got hurt. I didn't train as hard. I was distracted. But the whole thing with recruiting is you have to identify football players that fit your system. Stars mean nothing. When I came to Michigan, if you had 4 or 5 stars, I was going to make sure I was better than you. I was going to make sure that I had a better career and you was going to follow me. And I'm not going to get into any names, but that's just the way it goes. I actually beat out 4 and 5-star recruits.
Yeah, because there were a lot of 4 or 5-star guys on those teams. A lot.
To me, it meant nothing other than somebody thinks highly of you, but once you get to the collegiate level, it doesn't matter anymore. I'm going to make a comparison right now. I look at 4 and 5 star recruits the same way I look at the draft. Okay, you got a bona fide first round pick who's a bust. It's just more of them at the college level because there's so many more 4 and 5 star players that go to these Division I schools that never bust a grape. But then when you look at the draft, you look at a guy like Larry Foote, who was a 4th round player, 4th round pick. He's been in the league 13 years and outlasted guys like LeVar Arrington, and all these other great players that you saw in high school and college. So really, look at Tom Brady, 6th round pick. The running back from Denver, Davis.
Terrell Davis.
Mm-hmm. These guys. Yeah. So to me, when you see a mid-tier guy coming out in recruiting, that doesn't mean he's not just as good or if not better than the guys that are ranked higher than him. Everything's going to play out depending on what system you play in, what the type of guys you had around you. Charles Woodson had 10 other pros on the field with him. 10 other pros, and he had the best defensive back coach in America. That's why, and then he was good in his own right. Charles was a 5-star. He's a Hall of Fame football player. Sometimes it does line up, but less times than it. But it doesn't add up more times than not when it comes to picking the right 5-star guy and say this guy's going to be your guy going all the way through. Trey Waynes, Darqueze Dennard, 2 stars each. 2 stars each. That's a 4-star cornerback combination who have been the best 2 defensive backs in this conference the last 3 years. So, as far as the stars, man, if you get caught up in them, then they'll have you seeing stars when those guys are bust. But when you can go back and watch the draft, those guys from the 3rd round to the 6th round are your real football players. Those other guys are workout warriors, guys who take their shirt off and make everybody happy and get all excited, and then they mess around, get a lot of money early, then they flop out the league. And that's what's happening at the college level, too. It's the same comparison.
All right, we got to get to a break. We'll come back on the other side. We'll get into some X's and O's and break down, some of the vulnerable aspects of Michigan State, courtesy of Marcus Ray. So stay tuned for that here on the Michigan Insider on Sports Talk 1050 WTKA and our